Jim Ryder, absent. Philip Hood.
Here.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlo, absent. Right? Is she on the
Yes,
phone?
she's absent.
Okay. Julie Gottschall, present. Richard Haig.
Present.
John Rosen.
Present.
Okay, we've got a quorum. We're going to begin. We already had our closed session, and we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance. So if you guys will please stand and join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, if anybody would like to address the board for a public comment, please do not hesitate to do so. Not seeing anybody jumping up. Moving on to addition of discussion items, item 5. If anybody would like to present an item for a future discussion or an agenda, please raise your hand. Yes?
I wanted to share with everybody that Mark and I have reviewed the board meeting calendar, and we are going to be combining our June meetings to the June either 13th or 16th. I'll be bringing that to you the next meeting. And the reason we have to have it on the June, is it June 13th?
13th, yeah.
The reason we have to have it on the June 13th is because there needs to be 30 days from today in order to vote on the amended budget. We then have our July meeting, which we're going to need to talk about at the next meeting, whether we're going to have it at 7 a.m. or 6 p.m. You know, it's our usual July discussion. And then in August, we looked at the calendar, and that early August meeting is always iffy for vacations. So we're going to cancel that and just have the regular meeting in August. So I will be emailing you that. And if anyone has any objections, we'd be certainly. I will also share though that during that time period, we will be having policy committee meetings because we have a lot of work. Our first one is next Tuesday at Village Hall to discuss a variety of policies. We may also wind up having to have emergency type meetings this summer, so, but we are going to cancel our regularly scheduled meetings. So I just wanted to share that.
So just that's a good, you raised the point about the policy meeting next Tuesday. That is having to do with all issues related to child safety in our schools, right? Okay, so anybody who's would like to attend, they can, or I believe it is going to be televised as well.
It's
correct?
televised and it's open.
Yeah. Okay.
I have something. It's more of a comment. I attended the social media presentation. What night was that? Last Thursday night, and a lot of people there, a lot of attendance. I think it raised some real issues for me. I think for a lot of parents. I've had a lot of parents talk to me over the weekend, and some disturbing information I thought that our own students disclosed, and it just kind of, as a board member, raised some liability concerns, in particular our use of information technology and the types of controls that we put on there. And so I do hope, and I know that we're going to address that another time, but I just want to let the whole board know that I've had probably half dozen separate conversations with people since Thursday night, and I think it's something that the community is going to be paying attention to.
We did talk about it at admin team this week, and I know Margaret and Nate are going to present some data at the next board meeting so the board can actually hear, and then Kevin can talk a little bit about the controls that are in place for that too. So I think everybody was a little shocked at the data, so I think it's good information for the board to hear.
Good. Anybody else? All right, so now we're going to move on to our discussion items, and we're going to begin with a middle school math curriculum adoption discussion. And for this, Kelly Bay and Mr. Blackmer will be explaining the math program changes for the upcoming 2017-2018 school year. In an effort to maintain a high level of math achievement, we have redesigned our course sequence to better meet student needs and align to grade level standards. Take it away.
Good evening. Hi, everyone. So I will be presenting along with Nate. We do also have two of our middle school math teachers here with us this evening. Sally Bishop is a 6th grade math teacher, and Andy Shantz teaches 7th grade math. So they'll be able to really elaborate on some teacher perspective, which I think you appreciate, and I know Nate and I do as well. So we come here before you tonight to talk a little bit about, quite a bit about, our math curriculum review process that we've gone through. And so I want to note first that we have sped up this process. It was not scheduled for next year, but we did feel that there was some urgency to really address our current implementation of the program that we are using. We wanted to examine the course offerings that exist for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. We wanted to look carefully at our beliefs related to math instruction at Lake Bluff Middle School, and we needed to do some work to realign our scope and sequence. So for tonight, we're going to talk about what was the process that we had gone through, what are some of the outcomes that we discovered and agreed upon, and then we would like to share some recommendations with you. So, as we entered this work to look closely at our math curriculum at Lake Bluff Middle School, we first were making some decisions about the current Agile Mind program that we use. So the core resource that we use for instruction is called Agile Mind, and it was a program that was reviewed 6 years ago to be adopted when we went through our curriculum review cycle at that point in time. And so, we often want to look back and look carefully at the programs that we have in place, the methods of instruction that we're using, so that we can constantly be making improvements, so we can look at our students as they evolve and grow and change. And so as we were looking at our scope and sequence, we really made some discovery that we needed to stop and realign the units that were being taught at each of our grade levels. And so we put together a graphic for you tonight that was, I believe, included in your packet. And one of the things that has come out of this review process, we're going to talk about the program separately, kind of that's the second layer. The first layer is the new, or redesigned, I guess is a better word, redesigned math course sequence that we are proposing to move towards for next year. And so, just to kind of explain, at the 6th grade level, we are suggesting that there's the potential for students to enter Common Core 6, a 6-7 course, and a 7-8 course. The 6-7 course would be primarily comprised of 6th grade math standards, and then they would enter sort of half a year's worth of 7th grade math standards, with the thought then that they would move down to a math 7-8. That would be the projected pathway, and then those students would wrap up their 8th grade year in algebra, which is and has remained sort of the goal or target course that we would like our 8th graders to get to. But in this work, we've discovered that the program that we're proposing this evening is highly rigorous, and that 6-7 course is one that moves at a rapid pace. And it's really dependent upon students being able to grasp those math concepts quickly. So with that being said, there is the potential that we have some 6th graders who may need to be working at the grade level standards. And so we would have a course designed and in place for students that are needing the grade level standards. Nate's going to talk a little bit about the purpose for these offerings at the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade level. But I do want to point out that we are still in the process of conducting the placement procedures. And so we can't speak tonight with definites about the number of students that meet the criteria for each course and how many sections of each that we would need, because this springtime is the time of year that placement process occurs. So that placement process will be occurring with our 5th graders and 6th graders in the weeks to come.
Can I, just a logistics question, what does CPM stand for? Was
They're
yours?
going to explain that.
Sorry.
That's a very good question,
I
Mr.
can,
Beard.
we're going to get into that in the next layer, but CPM is the math program, and it stands for College Preparatory Math.
Okay, thanks.
So one of the sort of terminologies, and I know that you've been on the board long enough to know that we have lots of acronyms and lots of terms that we like to throw out, but I do find this one to be helpful as we talk about math curriculum and curriculum adoption. One of the terms that I've grown to be fond of is the notion of an anchor resource as opposed to curriculum. The resources that we're using or recommending are not the curriculum. they're a method by which we can deliver instruction, and they're the resources that are going to support much of what we do in class. So if you hear me using that term, I'm referring to the program, but it's probably more accurate to call it something along the lines of an anchor resource. I want to also recognize that our math department was very much involved in this math review. Obviously, we have both Sally and Annie here tonight. We couldn't get the whole department. They're also quite busy with their families at home this evening. But their awareness, their knowledge, their input, their feedback as we went through this process is just critical. They're in those classrooms day in and day out, and doing a fantastic job. But at the same time, we're able to really help us to hone in on our desires for the math sequence going forward, the curriculum going forward, and they were present for some of our visits. And Kelly, pardon me if I'm jumping too far ahead. Okay, we did have an opportunity to go and visit 2 schools, a school in Avoca district, Marie Murphy was the middle school, very similar to ours in many respects. Slightly smaller, they're just a little under 300 students, a little over 82 per grade level, but similar in many respects. We spent
In Glenview. People don't know where Avoca is, so
Glenview.
Avoca is in Glenview.
Thank you very much. Winnetka, actually, right?
Winnetka.
Thank you.
Glenview and Winnetka.
Okay,
Both.
got it. Feed into the Stevenson High School
Right.
District.
No, they feed into New Trip.
We'll get it right. Pardon me. And then we also visited Oak Grove, and they're a K-8 district. That visit actually took place this morning. So it's also really powerful to see these anchor resources in action and hear from teachers who've been using them for some time, and the feedback has been very positive. And I can say that both of those districts perform very well when you look at the percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards, and so that's helpful to see as well.
So I did skip over a very important piece, and so Nate, thank you for filling it in. As far as our timeline goes, it was really January that we made the decision to speed up this review. And then in January and February, we conducted the review and developed a new scope and sequence for the units that we believe should be targeted at each grade level to simplify it. We then in March reviewed 4 different programs or potential anchor resources that our teachers could use in terms of instruction. And we were guided in that work with a consultant that has been part of our district's math work for quite some time now, Janice Heigl. And then this month we were able to visit both of those schools. So we are here tonight to present this information to you with the hope that we can move forward with some of these changes for next year. So I think I'm going to go through all of it and then we can open up for questions at the end. Does that sound great? Okay. Yeah, I'm going to just go through. So I want to kind of transition to this CPM program adoption. So College Preparatory Math is actually a nonprofit math program that has been around really since 1989. There was a group of teachers that decided that they needed to make some adjustments to really designing a math program for their students. And so this math program, the infographic is small and hard to read, but one of the other pages that is included in their brochure really emphasizes the fact that we're transitioning from the teacher as sage on the stage to the guide on the side. So less of the in front of the classroom lecture to facilitation. And the beautiful thing about this is that our teachers are already doing so much of that with their math instruction already. And so that will be a seamless transition. There's strong emphasis on problem solving, communication, collaboration, and sense making. So I wanted to just kind of create the structure for this program, and Sally and Annie can speak. I don't know why Janelle told me to bring her. You know, I spent the morning with her, and so she's on my mind. Annie and Sally are going to speak to more of the things that really resonated with them as we reviewed CPM and why they're convinced that this is the direction that we should head.
Hello again. When we started pushing for the district to start reviewing our math resources. We were looking for appropriate challenging material for our students. We were looking for a curriculum that supported a growth mindset in our students. We were looking for a curriculum that provided a strong mathematical foundation for conceptual understanding through vocabulary, application, and collaboration with their peers. And we were also looking for a strong sequencing of concepts that were reviewed and spiraled throughout the course so that students could gain a deeper understanding, which provides multiple opportunities for mastery of certain concepts. I'm going to talk just a little bit about what we saw when we went to Avoca. One thing that we really enjoyed was the collaboration piece. It's something that we're already doing right now with Agile Mind, so it's nice to see that, but it's in a little different way in the sense that CPM explicitly teaches students roles as part of the program, so students are taught how to interact with each other rather than it just being assumed. It's built into the curriculum. They have different roles. You see things such as team approaches in assessment. So there's both independent and team assessment, which is, again, part of that collaboration piece that we like. When we went there, students were all engaged in certain tasks. They were having really rich mathematical discussions over challenging problems. The teacher was acted kind of as a facilitator, and again, was not just right in front of the class the whole time lecturing. Instead, students were problem solving, and the teacher was kind of checking in with them and helping guide them towards their learning. What we also noticed with this particular program was something that we feel has been missing from what we've had, that we've tried to create on our own, but this program comes with it. So with this spiral curriculum means that once a unit is done or a chapter is over, the students are going to see those concepts come out throughout the entire year. So I believe that every homework assignment they get, there will be 2 or 3 problems on that day's concepts, and then 6 or 8 problems on things they've learned before. So they're constantly reviewing that material, which we feel is so important. We don't want them to lose that knowledge of what they've learned. Every assessment also has spiraled review, which fits nicely into our standards-based reporting tool that we're going to have next year, because students will have multiple opportunities to show that they can master a standard.
A couple other comments. So our hope is that after introducing this information to you tonight, we plan to put the materials out for preview beginning tomorrow so that we can have them out for display. I have a few here tonight that we could have you take a peek at if you'd like. Otherwise, they'll be at Lake Bluff Middle School in the main office. So families, community members are welcome to come in, take a look at those materials. They'll be out the required 2-week time frame, and then when we reconvene for the board meeting on the 23rd, we'll be able to address any comments that have been made and seek input before your approval. I think the math teachers really pointed out the strengths over not only that align with their beliefs, but as we reviewed the other 4 programs, this one certainly rose to the top and left us sort of unanimously favoring it. And then our visits at the other districts, of the other middle schools, really supported the fact that this is the right way for us to go in terms of a new anchor resource for instruction. I also want to note that in terms of cost, the price range that we are budgeted for, or the price range in the quote, does fit into our plan for next year's budget, so it will be budgeted for, and it is something that we can cover the cost of.
Also important to note that Avoca consistently ranks in the top 10 in the state every year for math achievement. I think that's really important to note.
So, are we ready for questions?
We are.
I'm just from a practical perspective, I'm trying to visualize how this works in the classroom. Having at one time in my career a long time ago, 20 or 30 kids, and you're going to be managing these kids through different tracks. Proportionally, you may have let's just say a third of the kids are gonna be in the brightest track and can move on that fast.
Oh.
The alternate path, and then there'll be others that are gonna be moving,
Those are in different classes though.
oh, they're in different.
They're in
classes?
different classes.
Okay, so it's not in the same class?
Not in the-
So you segregate those kids in the beginning based on their scores? Is that the way?
We will, based on criteria, identify which course is the best fit for student
Okay.
based on the needs that they have according to the
And
assessment.
that will be based on several scores, not just
Okay.
one, and teacher
Okay, so
recommendation.
that makes it easier to think through. So proportionally, let's just take sixth graders. I know you haven't done the testing yet, but how many do you think would move toward this alternative path?
I would say that's very, very hard to guess
Yeah.
because I
Is it?
asked the same question this week.
I don't,
What if you only have two?
then we'll have to have some conversation about what will be the best way to meet their needs.
ask the same questions
I-
John asked.
That's bad.
I asked the same 2 questions this week.
If you look, so, I mean, what if there's only 2, are you saying that are in the 7-8 in 6th grade?
Yeah,
In one
yeah,
class.
yeah.
Well, they wouldn't be in one class, because if you notice in 7th grade, there would be a section of 7-8. So what I could see happening is putting those 2 students, I have some 6th graders in a 7th grade class right
Oh,
now.
you do, okay,
Yeah.
okay. And they're moved there in the beginning of the year, or do they move during the year?
That would be from the start of the year, if that's how if
how
they've
it works.
demonstrated that through the
Okay.
variety of assessments that we are offering. If we get started with the year, the student is placed in a course that, based on assessment, they have shown is right for them, but through instruction, they are maybe ready for a little bit more, going deeper, then we can have some conversation about if they should remain in that course or if we want to make some decisions midway through.
And we've done that before, so.
I'm just a huge advocate of challenging. I had the opportunity many years ago to be in that situation, and it was probably made the most profound difference in my life to have the grounding in math that I had and take it forward in this fashion. So I'm really a proponent of that.
Thank you.
I think maybe I missed something, and hopefully it'll be a helpful question to other people. The college preparatory math program, is that replacing Agile Minds?
It
Yes.
would.
Also
Yes,
for
it would
everything, it's not
replace.
just that one track.
Nope, it would be for everything. We would move away from our subscription with Agile Mind and replace that with this new math program, CPM.
So we've been on Agile Minds for
The
6
year
years.
before I got here, so 6 years, and the curriculum cycle usually counts for 7.
Yep.
But we felt a need with all the different math issues and math concerns from the staff that we evaluated it a year early this year.
Okay, and this is, we're talking about an implementation in 17-18 next year, right?
Correct.
One of the things you talked about, a couple of questions, sorry.
No, please.
The guide on the side and the sage on the stage. So you're moving toward more of a guide on the side approach, right?
I would say we're continuing to guide on the side.
Yeah, we do it now.
Mine started that,
Okay.
so we've sort
And-
of been the facilitator of discussions.
A
And
question.
Bridges does that at the elementary
A
school.
question that brings up in my mind, because there's been controversy surrounding the flipped classroom. Does that lend it? Do you guys do that?
I would classify this as more of a workshop model. So the teacher would, and a lot of what we saw in the variety of classrooms we were able to observe is the teacher begins the day. Might be a small layer of let's look at last night's homework in our groups and talk about where we might have had some challenge, but we're quickly moving into the lesson in which the teacher begins with 10 to 15, maybe longer, but 10 to 15 minutes of a lesson related to the learning target or goals,
Got it.
lesson objectives for that day.
Yep.
Then they're going to send students off in their groups to begin to practice that concept.
Yep.
There may be layers within the lesson where they're pulling them back to say, hey, I noticed where several of the groups had a little bit of trouble on this particular concept. Let's all talk about that. So the instruction is happening very deliberately. And if the teacher isn't pulling everyone back to point something out, they're working with tables, they're working with partnerships, they're working with individual teachers as they work through the room.
It is not a flipped classroom.
Okay, and then one follow-up question too. You talk about the spiraling, coming back to hitting these topics over and over again. Before we had Agile Minds, there was a program here called a couple different names.
Probably
Chicago
Chicago
Math
Math.
was the one that I remember it called. It was something else. I think
Everyday
it was.
math, yep.
Yeah, and one of the problems there was spiraling, and that kids wouldn't grasp a topic they'd say, well, don't worry, we'll come back to it. But they'd come back to it maybe weeks or months later. I think I'm hearing a difference that sounds positive, but can you elaborate on the difference between the way spiraling was used in Chicago Math versus the way it's going to be used in this new program?
I can speak to that a little bit. So Everyday Math was a program that was maximized at the elementary level, not at the middle school level, but it's to the same tune. I feel like what's different about this spiraling is that there is a moment in time in which we are defining mastery. And so I think that's a little bit more clear cut, and we know when students should have mastered or achieved a skill or concept. And I think what we're trying to emphasize is that we're not going to teach something in a unit and then like, okay, you got it, let's never look at it again. We want to just come back and make sure that's a thread through the course, that we're continuing to check up on our performance with that skill, or our ability to remember how to solve a problem or to frame equations and that sort of thing. So we're coming back to it in a way that's just reviewing it so that we can constantly have that skill, because we know that math concepts build upon one another, and if we lose something, it's going to be that much harder as we go on to the next course when we need that framework to help us be successful.
I would also elaborate on that. Since I've been here, there's been many discussions from parents and from teachers that they wished that we could go back and revisit, because that right now they're currently moving from 5th grade Bridges Math to 7th grade Agile Minds when they move to 6th grade. And they're missing some of the foundational pieces that the teachers and the parents have been a little concerned about. For some kids it's been fine. So what this team is doing is really setting it up to meet the needs of all of our students. So just like anything else with math, they'll revisit it, but it's not going to be like, believe it, I was one of the parents that I didn't like Chicago Math for my kids. But I really see this as a totally different setup. It takes care of the holes that I think the teaching staff has seen with Agile Minds.
Probably, having been here for both, I can say that having been here for Everyday Math, one of the things that was probably not part, I know was not part of that program, was the integration of assessing those areas that have been taught and really keeping it fresh. There was this, hey, it's going to come, we'll come back to it. Also integrated into that now is, okay, this is the point in time when you're expected to have learned this material, and if you're not proving with your assessments that we're doing that you've got that, teachers are aware of that and can really be working with students to support the mastery of that content. What's nice about that, it's not the one and done. You're going to see it in the practice homework assignments that are going to be going home. You've got your new content, but you've also got some of the other material that you want students to stay current on. And that is somewhat different than what you would have perhaps remembered if you had a student.
I think it's very different.
Yeah, more intentional. Thank you.
We're not saying, oh, don't worry about it.
Mike.
Sorry.
I don't think we have a plan to say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll hit it later. Our goal is for them, to get it throughout the unit, and then we'll be reviewing it. But there's going to be some kids who don't get it by the end of the unit, and that's okay, because we will be reviewing it. But our goal is, right.
Do you find, though, that there is then maybe some kids that get bored by the review, that you lose some attention with that? I've heard that from kids, that, oh, this again.
I think that this is done differently, and by that I mean we're not spending a full day reviewing. It might come in the form of the group assessment, where we're going to revisit it as sort of a check-in or a checkpoint, or as they had talked about with the homework. If there are 5 problems in the homework, the first 2 are about today's lesson. The second 2 are something that we have done before, just to kind of check back in on it, and the third one is maybe something that's coming up. What do you know about that already? And so
I think back to the notion of individualized learning in the classrooms that we observed, if students had demonstrated mastery of a concept, they weren't forced to sit there and relearn it. There was a lot of different things going on at a given time in a classroom. And that happens now. That'll continue to happen going forward. We don't want to simply tell a student, hold on, we'll catch up. That's not the approach that we'd be taking there. The whole group, that's where the whole group instruction versus the facilitation sort of differs.
Okay. Okay, and on the point of individualized learning, I just have a question. It seems to me that there's such emphasis now in education on collaboration and working in groups and all of that. Do we lose some kids with that approach? Because you have more introverted personalities or people that are more, when you say individualized learners, like solo learning, they work better. Are we sure that these models and this approach is capturing people that may not project themselves in a group or may not feel comfortable in a group setting and making sure they have ample opportunity to be assessed and to learn and to participate?
Yeah, I mean, there was, one of the things that I pulled from this, research has shown when students talk about math, they understand it better and remember it longer. So that's one layer of that collaborative piece. But I do think in the classroom, as we get to know students, it's fluid. There's going to be a little bit of nudging to have that conversation so that they're prepared to engage in those types of conversations as they move forward. But I do think that there's a balance, and we'll get to know sort of students on an individual level and determine sort of what mix of instruction works best for them. It is interesting as teachers sort of personalize the layers of this anchor resource or of this program. And so each classroom that we went into was aware of the roles. There's sort of 4 core roles that students can take on within a group, and so some of them will assign them, like, you're managing resources today, you're facilitating the conversation. But then as students get towards 8th grade, it's sort of like, you know what you need to do, decide who's doing it. Sometimes students will work in partnerships, sometimes they work in quads or 2 partnerships together. Other times, I want you to practice this on your own, and then you can turn and talk. And so I think that we want to achieve a balance in that. I do think that it's important to know learners and that we're working to their strengths, but we also need to sometimes shore up the areas that may need some work. And I think that understanding the introvert versus extrovert is extremely important as well, so we don't want to dismiss that.
But I would also share that this is not new. We've been doing this in all of our classrooms, kindergarten through 8th grade, since long before I got here. So that particular concept is not changing. They're already doing that, and you can walk into any classroom during math. And
kindergarten through 8th grade.
One of the very first Bridges lessons I saw in Marcy Lennox's room, and I tell her this, I had a little boy walk up to another little girl and say, I respectfully disagree. And I thought, wow. And then he went off on some math fact, and then the kids were working in collaborative groups. That has been happening in the district. There's really not anything new that way. And I think, frankly, if the world itself worked like our kids do in math, the world would be a much better place. I'm just going to share that. So we do that. That part's not new with this curriculum. Any other questions?
I'm sorry I don't want to take anybody else's time. How about, as a board, we often make decisions that the community, there's always people who are not 100% in favor of what we do. And we don't make curricular decisions, but we want to be involved in learning about them, and you guys in general make those curricular decisions and the recommendation to us. And people are that not everybody's going to be happy with curricular decision. When people come forward and start to, because they'll come to us about curricular issues, what are they going to say? What's the controversy about CPM math? What is the argument against it?
Yeah, please.
I think when Kelly talks about the review we did with the 4 programs, and we all did a secret ballot of ranking the 4 choices, and CPM came out at the top for all of us. And then I think I was looking for different course descriptions to create a document for parents, and I Googled CPM math, and the first thing that came up was, of course, horrible reviews about it. And I immediately sent an email to everyone, and I'm like, hold up. I don't want to get into another Agile Mind situations. Like, should we just, abort the mission, wait another year, deal with it? And I was like, the concerns are that it is all group work. So like, it's a lot of group work and teacher facilitating, and I was worried about that. When we went to see it in action last week, I mean, we came out, I was like, I'm on board, like, this is amazing. It's not just that. The teachers are pulling it together and teaching whole group lessons, and when it's appropriate, but they're letting the students also work at their own pace. They're monitoring their progress throughout class with visual aids, where the students can go up and move their little magnet person, so the teacher knows which group's on which section and can go to those different groups to help. And then see, okay, they're all stuck on number 46. Let's meet back together and discuss it and walk them through it. I just felt so good after last Monday seeing it in action and these teachers that were there just raving about it. And that's the most important to me, like hearing, I said, I need to hear from these teachers because they're going to tell us the truth. And they were just raving about it.
If I could go back to the comment I made at the beginning in reference to the anchor resource. The reason I use that terminology is because the most valuable resource we have are the teachers teaching. The people who get to know the kids, who understand where they need to be pushed, who learn where they may be struggling and develop a response to that. They have a variety of tools at their disposal to do that, but I should be clear. It's not all group work. It's not, there is whole group instruction where it's appropriate, there's group instruction where it's appropriate, and let's be honest, if there's a need to change mid-course in a class, maybe 10 minutes left, it's obvious that a concept isn't quite resonating with my class, they're gonna make a change, and they're gonna work toward addressing that. So if I can, I wanna make it clear that it's not the resource specifically that I think is going to present us a challenge. We're lucky because we've got the right people in the rooms delivering the instruction, and it's a tool that we feel is better for doing what we hope to do. We do well. We think we can do better with some adjustments.
But people might
Yeah, that's what I was asking about, because they'll come to us, and it'd be nice to know it in advance a little bit what they're going to say. So.
And one last thing they might be concerned about, because it's an online platform. The textbook's online. The school we saw at Avoca, I don't know how Oak Grove did today. They had hard copies of the textbook in the classroom, one per every 2 students. But when they go home, the resource is online, and that's similar to Agile Mind. It's much easier to navigate than Agile Mind. I don't know how many of you have. I've taught a few of your students, but it's cumbersome. This has built-in manipulatives. I've used a few already. I've used the probability tools. It has a built-in link if you're familiar with Desmos, the online graphing program. It has Desmos activities built in. It's much easier to use. So that might be another concern.
Just kind of piggybacking off of that really quickly, sorry. Yes, that's a little thing. One other thing with Agile Mind that a lot of parents were concerned about was the lack of kind of support on the parent end. There wasn't really, a textbook. It was really hard to navigate for parents. This provides a parent guide, also for home, so kind of to get that support at home as well.
Thank you for all your work on this. We really appreciate it. And I know that they've had some agonizing conversations.
I still have one more question. I'm sorry. I'm going to drag you on. The 2-week time frame for posting this, where does that come from? Is that our policy?
It's in board policy and school code.
It's school code as well?
There's some school code related to curriculum. Materials have to be posted a certain amount of time for parents to view.
Do we deny people access if they came later and said, can I look at the curriculum?
We would show them the curriculum anytime, but before curriculum is approved,
that's the
it has to be posted.
Okay.
In fact, I put that in the board agenda the last time we approved curriculum, Shelley. So we're going to have to get that little blurb so that they can see it.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good luck. Every time you do something new like that, it's going to be a challenge, so good luck with that. All right, so now we're going to move on to item 6B, the 2016-2017 amended budget, and Mr. Khan, our business officer, will provide details on that budget to us.
Kelly and Nate, you guys are welcome to go home and do your homework. You've both got busy weeks. Thank you for your great work on that. Nate, if you have to stay for your superintendent internship, feel free. Sorry about that, Jay. We're ready to go.
So, I think I mentioned this at a couple of previous board meetings. The school code allows the board to, from time to time, amend their budget or to move money within their budget, but it's required that if you overspend your original budget in a particular fund, or if you're changing budget lines items by more than 10%, that you adopt an amended budget, an official amended budget. As you know, we had a situation this year where we're no longer able to share buses with Lake Forest High School. This was not contemplated in the original budget, and as a result, we've overspent our transportation budget by over 20%. So we needed to officially amend our budget. To do this, we have to follow all the same rules that we did for the original budget. So tonight, I will be presenting a tentative amended budget, and then it needs to be on display for 30 days. We need to publish public notice that the budget is viewable, and then we'll come back on June 13th, which is over 30 days from now, to officially adopt the amended budget. And then it will get filed with the county and with the state.
Jay, I don't know if you're going to do it, but can you quantify some of those places where we have to move money around?
Yeah, and that's actually what I'm going to do next. So in your packet, I have, this is a comparison. So the budget numbers that are there are basically our new budget, and then the percentages off to the right are comparisons to our old budget. The highlighted areas are the major areas where we had significant differences from our original budget. I will say that our amended budget is still balanced, and what I've essentially done is during the course of the year we have been carrying kind of upsides to our budget and risks to our budget. So we've had some things that have come in under budget and some things that have come in over budget, and we've essentially put all that stuff into the new amended budget so that the upsides, we budget them as we expect them to come in, and they're still balanced. So I'm still expecting a balanced budget, although any conservatism or upside we had has been used to cover the downside, and we're pretty on the. There's not a lot of margin right now. We expect to be balanced, and we expect to come in at budget, but it could, it's about a 50-50 shot. It could go either way. The areas where we've had significant differences. So number one, state. None of this should be a surprise because we've been talking about it all year. State revenue is come in at about 50% of what was budgeted. I had budgeted for receiving all of our payments since we received the majority of them last year. We've received all of our general state aid, but our categorical payments, which are for special education and transportation, we received our fourth payment from last year, and then we received our first payment from this year. So the state is currently 2 payments behind, and we're not actually expecting to receive any more money from them this year. So we're only expecting to receive one of the 4 state aid payments this year, and so that has been reflected in the budget. Fortunately, we had very high collection rate for our property taxes, so those 2 numbers are offsetting, and our revenue budget in general is more or less unchanged. And so that's reflected in this number up here. The other area is, the big area where we're over, and the reason for amending is in transportation. As I said, overall we're 18% more, but our regular transportation is 26% more. So that's been driven by the loss of the route sharing. And then these numbers up here are both the state aid payments or the categorical payments. And then what's sort of saving our bacon is that we have had much less in special ed spending. We had some children graduate from the district, or we've brought students back in-house, so we have some upside in special education. We also had, I had budgeted for some expected tax objections that didn't materialize, so we had some favorability there. And so that upside is offsetting some of the other downside. And then, let's see if I got everything. Oh, and then our legal expenses as well. It's sort of buried in this chart, but as you know, the legal expenses are much more than budgeted this year due to some of the things that have come up during the year, and between settlements and just FOIAs and potential litigation, we've overspent our legal budget, but that's being offset just by various upside and some other areas.
What was the variance in the legal budget in total today?
The legal budget is, I'd say 80. It was $50,000 on 80, so it was almost 70-80% over
So far.
so far. I mean, that's what I'm projected for the whole year. So I'm expecting. I upped the budget from 80,000 to 140,000, and I think that should.
So $60,000 incremental
Yeah.
increase.
And then this shows you just sort of on a more of a function basis than an object basis. The amended budget on the left, the original budget on the right. We've got, as I said, property taxes and also interest rates are a lot more favorable than the new budget, offset the state categorical shortfalls. We're seeing some, if you can you scroll down a little bit, a private facility tuition and special ed funding is split in two lines because one is private funding and one is public funding. And then our legal expenses, that's showing actually 70,000. That's not all of it is legal expenses. And the other thing is this gives us an opportunity to budget for things that were not in the original budget. One of the things was we refunded our debt service. Did that last debt refunding. That was not in the original budget, and since we know that we did it and we have the actuals, that's been incorporated into this new budget.
Jay, can you remind us, at the next meeting, they'll have to, what happens? What's the procedure now for approval?
So this budget we're going to publish notice tomorrow and put this on display at the district office and on our website. And then you'll come back in June, on June 13th, and approve it for the final budget. I don't know if the state budget form was included in your board packets this time.
I don't think it was.
But it will definitely be in the board packet for next time. And that's basically just putting this budget onto the state form. And then, so we'll have one more meeting in between where we won't talk about this amended budget, but we'll talk about next year's budget at the May 23rd meeting. We'll do our tentative budget for 17-18 at the next meeting.
Questions, comments, concerns?
We are, am I correct in saying that we are not dipping into fund balance to balance this amended budget?
That is correct. We are dipping into fund balance as we had in our original budget to pay for the additions and renovations project, but
this is not increasing that.
no, we had enough.
So it's a matter of offsets.
Right, enough upsides in the budget to cover the downsides in the budget. So we were able to cover a lot of the unexpected expenses this year through conservative funding practices.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Thank you. All right, so we are not going to do item 6C, correct? The tentative budget, we're going to address that at our next meeting?
Correct.
Okay. And
I
then,
will say, sorry, that we will be, in this budget also is a fund transfer from capital projects or from education fund to O&M, and then the operations fund to capital projects to pay for the middle school, and you will have to formally approve that. So at the next meeting, we'll be adopting a resolution to publish notice for that, and then on June 13th, you'll also be approving the fund transfers, because that's requires board action.
It's kind of the final step in paying for the renovations.
okay. So we're going to move on to action items, and we only have one tonight. And we're going to talk about this will be in regard to as we just discussed, the 2016-2017 amended budget hearing, which we held at 6:45 on June 13th, 2017, right before our regular board meeting at that time. Public notice will be published right after this current meeting in a variety of different locations. So, may I have a motion to approve the 2016-2017 amended budget hearing for June 13th, 2017 at 6:45?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
John Rosen?
Yes.
Julie Gottschall, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Philip Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes, motion's approved. That's all we have for action tonight. Finally, we wrap up with public comments. Is there anybody who'd like to address the board? Not seeing anybody. Move on to a motion to go into closed session at 7:58 p.m.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote for going into close, please.
Julie Godshall, yes. Richard Haig?
Yes.
Philip Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Berry?
Yes.
John Rose?
Yes. All right, so we're enclosed, and I think we're going to go down to the fishbowl.
We're gonna go down to the fishbowl. Shelley, I'm gonna ask you to come down and get everyone on the telephone.